Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a ProStar alum from San Dimas High School based in Los Angeles County. The Work It module will teach you how to be a good employee and team member. So why pay attention to this module? You'll need to learn what makes a great employee, how to ask for help, and what to do, what to expect when you start your job. So you got the job. Congratulations. Now what? The first thing that you'll go through as a new employee of the company is something called onboarding, which is basically a process in which you fill out a lot of legal documents that you need to start your job. So most onboarding is done online now. Bigger companies generally have a more regimented process and some sort of online program that you can use, while smaller companies will do something that might be in person and a little less formal. Three of the notable forms that I remember filling out during my employment were an I-9 form, a direct deposit form, and a W-2 form. Again, if you work for a smaller company or if you get hired at a smaller company, it tends to be less formal. And if you work for a larger company, you'll probably have a more formal process with a lot of online components. So the I-9 form, which I spoke about earlier, you'll requires two forms of identification. Personally, I use my driver's license and my passport because they are the easiest to access. Pro tip, you will need to memorize your social security number, so you should do that if you haven't already. Paperwork and policies. So another part of your onboarding process is going to be learning more about the company culture, the company history, safety and sanitation. And again, depending on the company you work for, they might have different expectations as to what they require you to know. So most businesses use an online learning system called LMS, which is a learning management system. At my current job, we had to watch a lot of videos on safety and sanitation and company culture and about different expectations for different positions. Social diversity. So you will be working with a lot of different types of people with a lot of different beliefs and backgrounds than you. So be prepared to work with a lot of people who might not necessarily think the same things as you or believe the same things as you, but be ready to be accepting and open-minded to people that you'll work with. It's actually really fun. You'll meet all different kinds of people and learn all types of stuff. So during the training process, you'll learn about the brand culture, menu items, and different workstations. Your training might be with a manager or an experienced employee. I worked in a position where my training was 2 days of shadowing an experienced employee. You might be explained the POS menu and ingredients. That'll be important in most hospitality positions, and depending on the position that you have, you might learn about more about one thing than the other. You'll be taught how to do your daily day-to-day tasks such as service, food prep, cooking, cleanup, and food safety, and you might even do some inventory. So your first paycheck, the reason why you got a job to begin with. You'll have your gross pay, which is your pay before taxes are taken out, and your net pay, so it's what you catch in a net and bring home. Some common deductions that you might see on your paychecks are federal tax, state income tax, and Social Security. And I would recommend setting up direct deposit because it is much easier. You get your money more quickly and it's easier on you as you don't have to go to the bank and cash a check. You can just get the money directly on payday. So getting your work schedules. Schedules can be released anywhere from a week to 2 weeks prior. In most of the jobs I've worked, we've gotten our schedule a week in advance. Some companies have an app where you can log in to view your schedule, trade shifts, clock in, clock out, and all kinds of other stuff. I love using these apps because it's much easier to communicate with your managers. It's easier to figure out when you're working, and if you need to trade shifts with somebody, most apps have the ability for you to do that. What makes a great employee? So you should have a positive attitude, a willingness to learn, have well-developed problem solving and adaptability skills. You should be dependable and communicate early and often. So having a positive attitude means that that you have a great smile and that you are cheerful, that you take the initiative to help your team members, and that you take initiative in solving problems. You should obviously be kind and encourage others and take pride in doing a good job as well. Leave your personal problems at the door. I know that part is difficult sometimes, but if you are down, your team members tend to notice. And so it is better just to sometimes try as much as possible to leave it at the door. Communication. The benefits of being a good communicator are that your fellow employees, and also your employer has increased trust in you and respect. Also, it's polite to communicate and it demonstrates that you care about your job and your employment with the company. I know it can be really scary to communicate with your managers, whether it be about scheduling or you need time off or even that you have an issue, but communication really does save you a lot of issues. I know I was like really scared about it at first, but I've learned that if you communicate earlier rather than later, your problems can be solved earlier. You should also have a willingness to learn. So some points on how you know that you have learned something or that you are a good learner are, can you repeat back your understanding of the assignment to make sure that you know what you're doing? So whenever any of my managers give me a task, I always repeat back to them in sort of a Spark Notes bullet point form and make sure that I understand thoroughly what they expect me to do. And that has proven really helpful during my career. And asking questions is also a huge part of being willing to learn. No question is a bad question. And if you need to ask it, chances are your coworkers do too, and they're just not saying anything. An example of this is that you're having a hard time doing this task. Can you help me improve? You can also ask that to coworkers who've been there longer than you. They can often give you helpful tips and tricks so that you can get what you need to get done faster or more efficiently or better. There are some courses, so about scheduling, it's good to communicate with your managers, as I said previously, about whether when you have a busy course load or if you need to change your schedule around. I know that for me, this semester specifically, I was having a really hard time balancing school and work, and I had to communicate with my manager about reducing my hours, and they were very accommodating, and most employers are, especially if they know that you're a student. So again, communicating, being willing to communicate with your employer is a good sign to them. So take the opportunity to cross-train for other positions. I know in my current job, I was scheduled actually for a shift in a different position, and it helped me learn and actually be better at both of the jobs that I was employed in. So it's always a good thing to learn other jobs and other parts of your workplace. Handling conflicts. So some tips for handling conflicts are to not take the conflict personally and not to escalate it and talk to your supervisor or manager about it. Again, this does go back to communication. It is hard when you're in the middle of a conflict to get through it, but as it says on the slide, it's easier if you don't escalate it and you talk to your manager about it afterwards. It is difficult to handle in the moment, but again, with communication, most things can be handled. Dependability. So being dependable is an extremely important part of your job. And generally, if you're a dependable employee, your employer is more willing to work with you on other parts of your employment, like scheduling. So if you show up on time, get your work done, keep your promises, and are reliable, your employers and your coworkers will trust you more, and they will be more willing to work with you if you have issues. Don't be late, slack off, or ghost your employer, i.e., no call, no show. So what that means is that you don't come into work, but you don't call anyone, and obviously you don't show up. So even if you have a super last minute reason why you can't come to work, say you get into a car accident or you have a family emergency, it's never too late to communicate that to your employer. I did have a family emergency one time and I had to call off hours before my shift started, but as long as you communicate that to people, people are generally pretty understanding about the fact that sometimes things come up that you cannot control. Thank you to our sponsors for making Fit Day possible.